Hey, Stephen Yanni here at Berniston Auto Wrecking doing the junkyard crawl, and this is a Dodge Omni. The Plymouth Horizon and the Omni launched in 1978, and these were Chrysler Corporation's first subcompact front-wheel drive cars built in this country. And yes, these were built in this country. Now, there's a rumor going around that these were nothing more than rebadged Volkswagen Rabbits or Golfs. And if you watch our channel, you'll see we've done videos on the Rabbit, and those came out in 1974. Well, here's the reality of the situation. Volkswagen took a good long look at the Simca 1100, which was around since 1967, and they studied it, and they says, you know, that's a good car, we can make it better, and voila. In 1974, the Volkswagen Rabbit, also known as the Golf, arrived on the scene. So Volkswagen copied the Simca 1100 to create the Rabbit. Now, here's the thing. The Omni, which came along in 1978 in this country, was the Simca 1100's evolution. So in a sense, Volkswagen copied the Omni and Horizon to create the Rabbit. Now, there's not a single panel on any of these things that's interchangeable with the Rabbit. They're entirely different cars. Now, that said, it is true that early Omnis and Horizons came with small four-cylinder engines which use Volkswagen short blocks. Yes, that is true, but the rest of the car is absolutely not Volkswagen. Now, this one is a 1984 with a 2.2-liter Trans 4 engine. Now, of course, Mopar people know the Slant 6. That was all about the orientation of the engine in the car. It's on a 30-degree slant. Well, the Trans 4 was a transverse mounted inline 4. Now, this one here has the electronic carburetor. Yes, that's a two-barrel carburetor with an electronic controller on it. It's a single overhead cam with a belt drive right here. Again, a little bit simpler than Volkswagen's initial mechanical Bosch K-Jetronic fuel injection and later electronic fuel injection. But again, a very basic engine, something like 89 horsepower, 0 to 60 in 14 seconds. But these were the cars for the time. And again, this car preceded the K car by, what, 4 model years? The K car arrives in 81. And in fact, this preceded Chevy's Citation of 1980 by 2 full model years. Now again, this car here, I love the junkyard. It's kind of like a classroom. The X-ray view here of the front-wheel drive, courtesy of the removed fender. And there it is right there, the McPherson strut. Here's the half shaft with the CV joint feeding the front tires. And if you're like me back in the 70s and early 80s, you know, front-wheel drive cars like this were kind of depressing. But they were a sign of the times, and people actually traded in Sport Furies and Road Runners on these things. But again, this cost about $6,300 new in the day. Let's have a peek inside. Oh yeah, you gotta love that. That's what I call carthritis. Now, this one is an automatic, but between the seats we see that 3-speed marker. That's a baby Chrysler Torque Flight. Believe it or not, if you pull that out, you will see very similar structures to the 904, even scaled down from there. Speedometer reached to 85 miles an hour. Yup, that was the federally mandated thing. But keep in mind, another couple of years, I think 86 or so, the Omni GLHS, the legendary goes like hell Shelby with its 175 horsepower turbo 2.2, twice the power of this thing. Those things were screamers. They'd run a 14-second quarter mile. And again, the GLHS is essentially this thing with a bad attitude. Now, something I see here on the front seat is, this is a depressing reminder from the old days. This is a Massachusetts chassis emissions dyno printout right here. Now, there's a period of time, maybe a decade ago, when they thought it would be a good idea to test vehicles' emission output in a real-world setting. So instead of going down the road with the technician, they actually installed at emission stations little chassis dynos, not the good kind. They weren't meant for measuring horsepower, but they'd put the car through its paces under a load, and you get a printout like this. Here it is, your speed, hydrocarbons, NOx, and all this stuff here. This one clearly passed, I guess. But again, the dark old days, the crazy part is a lot of shops invested in these dynos, and I think 3 or 4 years later, the campaign was canceled, and those shops were left hanging with those stupid chassis dyno things. So if you want one, you can probably find it for next to nothing. Not that you want one. Now, the wheels on these things are pretty cool. These are the base wheels, and if you're familiar with your Mopar rally wheels of 1970 through 79 or so, they were composite with a stamped steel middle, a trim ring, and a center cap. These are reminiscent of that. The difference is these have 12 slots instead of 10, like on a Hemi Cuda wheel, and these are 13s, not 15s. But it's cool how Chrysler at least utilized a family theme of the rally wheel on the Omni wheel. Now, this one here again is a Dodge Omni. Over my shoulder there is a Plymouth Horizon, that blue creature in the distance. And that's basically this car's essentially identical cousin. The only differences were, as they say, badge engineering. The taillights were different, the grille was different, otherwise they were largely the same car. Now this does have the $58 optional rear window cleaner. Okay, this is the squirter up here, and this is basically a nice way to keep the rear window clean. But look at this, the pot metal these are made out of. Look at this stuff, it basically oxidizes and turns to poop after not so long. Now this, of course, you know, when it was new, like the Rabbit / Golf, is a very space efficient car. You open up the back and yeah, it's a hatch, and you know, kind of a neat little deal. If you're looking for a function vehicle, well, you know, you can't do much better than these things. And again, the whole point of front wheel drive is that by putting everything mechanical ahead of the firewall, it leaves the rest of the car for passengers and cargo, you know, and you can make it smaller and more fuel efficient. Now these things were good for 29, 30 miles per gallon around town and stuff. So these were the right cars for the time. Now these things were also available as a pickup called the Rampage in the Dodge world. And Volkswagen, of course, also had a Rabbit pickup truck, or a Golf pickup a little later on. So these were, you know, they kind of give you a stomach ache if you're old enough to remember when these things were all over the place like cockroaches. But at the time, these were the vehicles that helped pull Chrysler out of bankruptcy. And these allowed funding for the K car, which arrived in 1981, 3 years after these things hit the scene in 78. But next time somebody says to you, the Omni and Horizon are nothing more than rebadged Volkswagen Rabbits, you know better. The Rabbit copied the Simca, which was a Chrysler-owned company. And so the Simca 1100, there's a lot of that in every one of these things. So it kind of went the other way around. Volkswagen copied Chrysler. So now you know. Now, if you like this video, be sure to subscribe to the Steve Maggs YouTube channel. There's a lot more.